I'm honored to be here. Ryan Luke, of course, is the master host of this whole whole show, and he asked me to log in. He's going to be running a little bit late, but he'll probably be moderating the audience here. So I live in Dallas, Texas. I am a host of about 6 years, and I specialize in an area of the industry called rental arbitrage. And what's interesting about rental arbitrage is that you don't have to buy property to get into the space. And hotels actually do this. It's actually not uncommon for hotels to rent a building and then start a hotel. So rental arbitrage isn't new by any means. So I've been doing it for 6 years. I started by accident. I actually got my first apartment in Houston, Texas, when I was running a different business in the newspaper industry, which sadly, due to COVID, the newspaper business is not operating at this moment. It's been about a year that we've been shut down, but that business brought me to Airbnb because I was putting sales contractors and employees in apartments, kind of like my own version of corporate housing, my own short-term rentals just inside the company. And when they moved out, I had 10 months of a year-long lease left and I had nothing to do with this place. And so I had to figure out how to not lose money on this lease. And Airbnb was my breach into the short-term rental market. And so that was naturally rental arbitrage. I was paying a year-long lease through my business, put somebody in there for a couple months, and when they moved out, I needed to find a new customer. And so that is rental arbitrage really at the heart of it. I want to provide you guys some resources as well in case you're new to who I am. So my YouTube channel is called Airbnb Automated. I've got about 300 and something videos on that YouTube channel. So if I say anything here too quickly, if I throw around some slang like rental arbitrage or when we're talking about scaling the business, if you hear anything that you don't understand completely and we can't get to it in the chat for some reason, you can always just go to my YouTube channel, Airbnb Automated, and search for videos on the topics that I'm going to discuss, because I'm not going to be off baseline too much. Anything that I talk about here, you should be able to get more resources on my YouTube channel on specific topics as we talk about hiring housekeepers or scale or anything like that. There is a free course on my YouTube channel. So for those of you who are not yet in the Airbnb short-term rental arbitrage space, there is a start from scratch course available on YouTube as well for free that you can just watch. Tons and tons of videos there. And in addition, the last resource that a lot of people might benefit from is I do have a Facebook group called the Hosts of Airbnb Automated. Makes sense. The YouTube channel is Airbnb Automated, and then the Facebook group is the Hosts of Airbnb Automated. There's about 16,000 people in that group, many hosts from all over the world. So if you have questions about your city or questions about whether or not certain properties will perform well, that group of people, they're really helpful. And so they can give you like group feedback, which I find really, really great. I've actually polled them for previous videos, like how do you pay your housekeepers, and to be able to get information about how everybody is running their Airbnb or their short-term rental businesses. So those are the resources for you. That way you can, I hope you guys have a pen and paper handy. We're probably going to get really dense in some stuff. I'm not going to give you a slideshow. This is how I like to teach. You're going to be looking at my face the whole time. So I hope you don't mind. So use those resources, get out of pen and paper. I will try to monitor the chat until Ryan Luke arrives in case there is anything necessary. Like if you guys have any questions, feel free to shout in the chat inbox and I can slow down and answer some things for you. So just first off, what is rental arbitrage? As we discussed kind of lightly, what we're doing is we're taking a property, we're taking a product that exists in the real estate market, and then we're moving it into the hospitality space. That is really what an arbitrage is in our world. And so and this is what makes our type of arbitrage interesting, is because it's not technically an arbitrage play, right? We're taking a product and we're changing it effectively. So just to break down the mechanics, a year-long lease normally goes for a certain dollar amount in whatever market you're in. So whether we're talking about, in Europe, we're going by euros, apartment that's 1,000 euros a month, or an apartment in the United States that's, 1,200 euro, like 1,200 US a month. That is because you have to sign a year-long lease or longer. You have to pass a background check. You have to, of course, put your name on the line for the whole thing. They don't give you furniture. They don't give you your electricity, your internet. This is all just 1 year of base product. It's a box. You know what I mean? So now when you as a business are going to move this into the hospitality space, you're going to effectively touch it a few ways. You're going to put furniture in there. And if you have any experience, you're probably going to thoughtfully design the space to make the space look good. And then you're going to add the internet, you're going to add the electricity, you're going to add every little touch that makes it possible for somebody just to walk in the front door, drop their bags, and live there without any issues. You're lowering the barrier to entry for someone to live at this space. Where with a year-long lease, you have to go through the process, down payment, security deposit, all that stuff. Then you have to like furnish it. It takes days and days and days to become comfortable in that home. Well, now that you've taken this unfurnished apartment, added all the utilities and added the furniture, and even bought all the coffee and all the little things, you are now able to have somebody just walk in and within 30 seconds, they can feel at home. And with that, you are also making where they don't have to give you a 1 month security deposit. They don't have to pay you the first month's rent. If it's a short-term rental, they can just pay for 3 days and stay for 3 days. They can pay for 5 days. They can pay for a month. The longer someone stays in a short-term rental, usually the lower their average nightly rate is. But we're now calculating the cost by the night, where with the regular real estate market, people typically calculate the cost of a space by the month, right? So we're taking it from a monthly expense into a nightly. And so this is where the opportunity starts to come in with rental arbitrage, because just one of the core truths of the short-term rental market, speaking specifically to rental arbitrage, is that the rental arbitrage product, the hospitality version of an apartment, is inherently just worth more than the real estate version of the same apartment. Now, you did change it. You added furniture. That costs money. You're paying for the utilities and the internet. That costs money. You bought plates and cups and did all this cute stuff. That costs money. But all that stuff allows you to charge your cost plus rent plus a margin that just automatically exists in this space. Now, very boring versions of rental arbitrage would be your traditional corporate housing businesses. Like, for example, Murphy's Corporate Lodging is one that's out of Texas here, and I'm friends with the guy who bought into it. And what they essentially do is they look for the customer first, right? They go and they find a business that wants to use an apartment complex for, say, 4 months to house some employees. Right? They get the customer first, then they go to an apartment complex and say, hey, we'd like to rent here for 4 months. We need 4 or 5 apartments for 4 months because we've got a client. The building says yes, they sign on the line, they rent their furniture typically, and then they make the place livable and look nice, and then people move in for the 4 months, and then they charge a markup, right? They charge the rent on a 4-month-long lease. Rent is more expensive than on a year-long lease, but they still pay that 4-month lease with a slight markup. They pay for all the utilities, they pay for the rental furniture, and then they mark up about $1,000 a month. So what'll happen is the very core cost for a corporate housing company is rent plus $1,000 plus probably $250 in utilities plus about $400 in furnishings plus about a $200 to $300 premium per month because it's a 4-month lease instead of a year-long lease, right? So you're adding, 3, 4, 6, 8, 9, $1,900 to rent to the baseline rent that you typically would see anywhere else. So in the United States here, if an apartment is $1,500 a month, they will charge at bare minimum $3,400 a month for this 4-month long rental, and then they move out when the person's done for the 4 months and they shut the lease down. That is the most common, the most old school, but the most prominent version of the rental arbitrage play. But what we've found, and the reason why you guys are here on day 5 of the summit, and actually, let me first stop and say thank you all for being here. And I hope you all have really enjoyed the last speakers, because they're some of my favorite people that I've ever had a chance to hang out with in the short-term rental space. These people are rock stars. And so all of you who've been on the summit for the first 4 days, thank you for putting in all the work. I'm honored to be on your team. And with that said, moving forward. So what we found, and the reason why all these speakers are here on the summit, is that with technology and how culture has shifted in the travel space, you can take rental arbitrage and mix it with short-term rentals. Both of them have existed separately for some period of time. A hotel is simply a short-term rental. A bed and breakfast, a boarding house, these are short-term rentals. They've always existed. Rental arbitrage has existed for decades because businesses need to place employees for mid-term lengths of stay. And then there's websites like Furnished Finder, which you might have heard of. And they allow traveling nurses to stay for a month, 3, 4 months at a time. So rental arbitrage and short-term rentals have existed side by side for some while, but due to technology and cultural shifts, they come together very well now. And now is probably one of the best times to get into short-term rentals and rental arbitrage because of just how the space has changed and what the real estate market looks like at this point. And we're going to get into that here in a second as well. So essentially we're taking a real estate product, we're moving it into hospitality, and it's worth more, just like that. It just makes sense. It just is worth more because of what you're offering is no longer a real estate product. There's no longer the work to get in there. There's no longer the self setup. There's all this stuff that allows you to charge a premium. And so a lot of people who come to me, like after seeing some YouTube videos, they're like, well, what if I can't get customers? I'm like, well, you're not looking at it the right way, because this product always is a fallback, right? It always can fall back into the real estate market. And so if you failed in hospitality, now you have a furnished apartment that you can put back in the real estate market at a markup. So there are two ways essentially to make profit on a rental arbitrage, which is you just charge more to a tenant who wants a furnished version of the home, or you charge more to a short-term renter who's like a tourist who wants to come in. So when people are concerned about whether or not they're going to make any money, it's usually just a sign that they've never actually like done anything of the sort. And it's okay to be scared when you're coming into a new business. You know, that's kind of the nature of getting into a new business, is you're allowed to be afraid. But what people see as risk in rental arbitrage before they get in is no longer seen as a risk once they're in. It's just market dynamics. And so when somebody's like, aren't you afraid of picking up properties in this city, this country? I'm like, no. It just all makes so much sense that I can intuitively look at a property now after 6 years and tell you whether it'll make money or not, right? Because I've just been at it. So in the rest of this 1 hour, I'm going to tell you like what makes money and how I know that a place is going to make money. So you guys can rental arbitrage too. We're going to talk about scale, how you can basically leverage the advantages of arbitrage to do what it does best. So that's why I'm here, is I'm going to teach you how to get up there, because I have over 100 Airbnb properties or over 100 short-term rentals. We primarily use the Airbnb platform to fill them, but we do direct bookings and we do other things. And I did that. I built that from scratch with one apartment back in 2014, the one that I told you about where somebody moved out and I needed to fix it. We never invested a lot of money into the business. We just invested about $4,000 and snowballed our profits into the business. And we've since made about $10 million on the Airbnb platform through arbitrage. So it's cash flow heavy, it's powerful. It doesn't require a lot of fancy moves. It does make a lot of sense, you know, once you're in the mix. So I'm gonna talk to you about that whole scale, because at different sizes, rental arbitrage operates slightly differently. Because when you're a host, like you have 1 or 2 properties, you're very much just a host. But when you have 100 properties, you're managing businesses and systems and teams. It changes. So we first should cover what are the advantages and disadvantages of rental arbitrage in the short-term rental space. I think that's important to discuss. Of course, I'm super biased towards rental arbitrage, and I will speak its like benefits all the way. But there are a couple of key drawbacks, and we should talk about those. So the advantages first is your average ROI is higher when looking at generic investment types, right? So rental arbitrage, your cost to get in is security deposit and first month's rent and furniture. And if you're a great negotiator, you can even knock that down. I'll talk landlords into giving me property without a security deposit, without first month's rent, sometimes even 8 weeks of rent for free. But even in a normal scenario, security deposit, first month's rent, furniture, that's what we normally invest into an arbitrage. Then with investment properties, where you buy the property to Airbnb it, properties in the United States, depending on the cost of the home, how much you have to put down can change. And typically for an investment property, one that you do not live in, if you do not want to commit mortgage fraud, you have to put 20% down on the property. That's just kind of how it goes. So 20% down on the property plus furnishings can get expensive. So when you look at the numbers side by side, like a 4-bedroom house, let's look at a 4-bedroom house here. I have a friend, he's got a 4-bedroom house that makes about $10,000 a month. And his house is about $350,000. He had to do some repairs. I need to buy the furnishings. So he put about $70,000 down payment, and he put about $10,000 in the repairs, so that's 80. And then he put about $15,000 in the furniture. So he's at about $95,000 on this home. Now, $70,000 of it is right automatically equity in the home, because it didn't actually cost him really that money, but it's locked up into the home. So it's money that he put into play that he can't get back and reinvest, right? So that money's not gone, it's just locked away. Now with an arbitrage for a 4-bedroom house, you're looking at $2,500 a month in rent, roughly. First month and security deposit, $7,500. Plus the cost of furnishing that home is probably going to be about $12,500. So you're in for 20 grand on that property. Now, the key differences here is that $2,500 a month ongoing is the main difference. A landlord who's paying their mortgage is going to have a little bit of fat in that mortgage. We're talking taxes, we're talking interest on the mortgage, things like that. So in that $2,500, that first initial $2,500 that the tenant is paying to do rental arbitrage, the landlord, their mortgage is probably only like $2,000, maybe 1,800, and on average, maybe $500 to $700 of that is fat. So a landlord probably has about $1,000 a month advantage buying the property, but they also invested like 3x, 4x the amount, because we got in for 20, they got in for 95. So now, if that property pulls 10,000 a month in revenue, and after let's say $2,000 a month in operating costs, like we're talking housekeepers, supplies, and stuff like that, some oddball stuff. Now we're down to eight minus the 2,500 of rent and stuff like that. Now we're down to $5,500 in net, right? So the person who did the rental option, they make $5,500 of net income a month, where the homeowner, they have about $1,000 advantage per month, maybe even $1,500 advantage per month, because they get their debt pay down, and they have lower costs because they're just paying their mortgage. So somebody who makes $5,500 a month in the rental market, if they own the home, they might make $7,000 a month, including their debt pay down, right? But when you then take that same person in the rental market, if they invested apples to apples $95,000, we're looking at 4.5 properties, right? So now the person who's making $5,500 a month, they're now going to be making $21,000 a month on 4 4-bedroom houses, where the owner for the same amount is only going to be making $7,000 a month. You see that? So what we have here is you've got about a 3x ROI, right? Now, the thing about the homeowner is he gets his $70,000 still, and he gets the appreciation on the home. So you could then do the long-term math, and I don't want to like give you guys a bunch of weird math, because obviously I don't have a screen for this, but you can calculate, so the homeowner has a $70,000 head start, and they might over the course of 10 years have another $80,000 in appreciation. That's about $150,000 of head start that they have just by owning the property. So now if you take that 4 houses versus 1, well, that arbitrage person is making, instead of 7, they're making 21, they're making $14,000 more per month net income, right? And so even if the landlord over 10 years with appreciation has a $150,000 head start on final income, that person who does rental arbitrage, they close that gap in a year. So after 1 year of increased cash flow, increased return on investment, rental arbitrage makes more money after the first year. And what's really cool about this, the second thing, is the speed of scale then. Because the person who's doing arbitrage, if they have $21,000 of net cash coming in, as opposed to the landlord's, like $7,000 of net cash actually isn't just net cash. They still only have about $6,000 of net cash, because some of that is debt pay down. So as far as free flowing cash goes, the arbitrage person has like $21,000 of net cash coming in, where the owner has $6,000. Now the rental arbitrage person, they can make a new 4-bedroom house for every $20,000 that they get, right? So now every month they've got enough net cash to reinvest in a new arbitrage, because they're making $21,000 net on 4-bedroom houses. The owner, who has $6,000 of net cash coming in, he needs another $95,000. That's going to take him 18 months to get his next property, right? So person who started with 4, if not even considering the compounding effect of growth, they can pick up a property every single month for 18 months, right? And they will have 22 properties in 18 months, where homeowner guy will be getting his second property in 18 months. That's speed of scale, because of the compounding effect. That's not even the compounding effect, just how fast the cash comes back to you. Now, in arbitrage, there's a couple things that can speed this up. Obviously, the person who has 4 doors gets 21,000 in. The person who has 8 doors is getting 42,000 in. So we could even do the math where now 4 months in, they're picking up 2 houses a month because of all that extra cash if they're just reinvesting it. Also, in my world, I love to negotiate free rent. And negotiating free rent, if I get 2 months of rent for free at $2,500 a month, I've got $5,000 of discounts that I get on the front end. They're giving me $5,000 off on the front end, which means I get $5,000 of my furniture investment back faster, right? So that's another advantage of rental arbitrage, is because you can get some fun things on the back end. And this is going to speak to the secret of rental arbitrage here soon. Now, scale itself is another advantage of rental arbitrage. Now, when you own a house or own a couple houses and you want to automate your business, you typically have to get a co-host, right? You have to pay housekeepers by the job. Like, these are the things that are tough. Now, housekeepers by the job on a 4-bedroom house, they'll charge you $200 sometimes, right? Depending on your market. If you get to scale like me with over 100 properties, we pay our housekeepers about $12 an hour. And the cost to clean a house, like a 4-bedroom house, is 6 to 8 hours. 6 to 8 hours, I think, is nice and healthy. So now we're looking at, $72 to $96 of like actual core cleaning cost instead of $200. So our cleaning cost is less than half of our competition because we have in-house housekeepers at scale. Now, also for the management side, if you have 2 properties and you want to automate and be a real estate person that doesn't work on their own Airbnb or short-term rental business, you need a co-host, right? We're talking 20%, 25% of your revenue after housekeeping, right? And any co-host that charges you money to run your property, you need to make sure that they deduct the cost of housekeeping first before they take their 25%. Some co-hosts, it's an unethical practice, it's kind of taboo, is they'll take 25%, and then they'll deduct all the cost of housekeeping and take that out of your cut too. And you don't ever want to allow that. So just a pro tip for finding a co-host, they deduct housekeeping costs first, then you negotiate what your split is after that. But you're still paying 25% of your post housekeeping split, which gets kind of expensive. That $10,000 property that you had, you deducted the $2,000 and other things. Most of that was housekeeping per se. So now you're getting 25% of $8,500 after housekeeping. Where at scale with me, with 100 properties, I pay my managers salary, right? So I'll have my average management carry per city is about $40 per door per week. And I think that is a number that you guys should keep on file if you do want to scale with rental arbitrage. $40 per door per week is what I want to pay my management and my admin. My housekeeping budget is $65 per door per week, right? So that's my total costs to operate my business at scale. We'll talk about how to get there, of course, through the rest of this 1 hour. But then when you look at those advantages side by side, the fact that the arbitrage can scale so much faster, and then cost reduction gets pretty darn wild when you were in-housing all of your people, arbitrage makes a really big case, a really big, powerful case for building a business in hospitality. Now, cash flow is the other thing, like we just talked about. Having 100 properties printing money is way cooler than having 5 properties printing money. And my best friend and I, we started our Airbnb journey under generally similar timelines here in Dallas. I went from 0 properties to 55 in Dallas while growing Houston and Philadelphia. He went from 0 properties to 3 in the same amount of time because of the money comes back in, just like we talked about. So that cash flow on 55 properties is way cooler. I can go out and get loans with that money. I can go and do all sorts of fun stuff. I can start buying like houses in cash if I wanted to, if buying was my thing. So that's the benefit back end. Now, there are 2 disadvantages, and we did kind of speak to both. One is the slightly higher initial operating costs. When you're paying rent instead of paying a mortgage, the landlord is like, I need XYZ money to cover my mortgage, my interest, my taxes, and I want some cash flow after what I think to be potential repairs. So with a landlord, when you rent from a landlord, they're going to charge you enough money that it's worth it for them. They're going to make a profit on you, right? So somebody's eating a little bit of profit in the deal when you do arbitrage, right? So then that little bit of inertia is a technical disadvantage against rental arbitrage, because an owner, like we said, when they get in, if I'm paying $2,500 a month for rent, that owner's probably only paying an $1,800 mortgage, and at least $1,000 of that mortgage, $1,200 of that mortgage is debt pay down. So they're really only eating, $600 or $800 a month in actual costs because they own the property, where I'm eating $2,500 in costs, right? So they've got that $1,500-ish per month advantage on me. But that's why I say, like, we want to scale, and we're going to get to that in a second. Then the lack of equity, which we just talked about, the debt pay down. The lack of equity is a disadvantage in rental arbitrage, because if you're not familiar with business ownership, then you may not have a clear exit strategy for one, and you're going to have to come around on that. And so it might be also harder for you to argue valuation of your business because you don't have equity to point at. If you've been in business a long time and you've owned businesses, then you may understand enough about how businesses work, and you can look at your EBITDA, right? Your earnings before interest, depreciation, tax, and amortization, and you can argue your net operating, margins and your EBITDA and say, my company's worth this much money, right? You're going to have to learn all of that if you want to argue what your valuation is, because in any business, your objective is ultimately to have an exit, right? And in real estate, your objective may not be to have an exit, but just to build a big portfolio and to sit on that portfolio and pass it down. Now, you arguably could just build a business and pass it down to your offspring. You can, but a lot of times the like heuristic approach to building a business is to exit, where the heuristic approach to buying property is to build wealth. Now, I think there is kind of a myth here, because like I am saying that they both can have a value. They both can exist as long as you want them to exist for. You can sell either one, or you can pass them down. Like, I doubt that anybody would have, like, anybody now looking back looks at Ford Motors and says, "Oh man, yeah, that guy should have totally sold 5 years into building his business," because you're supposed to exit. Ford Motors has existed for 100 plus years, right? So there are arguments that building a business in hospitality is going to be fine. Marriott, Hyatt, Hilton, they've all done it. They've built these brands that transcend generations. And so there is a fallacy when comparing those two. They both have a value. They both can be sold. But the disadvantage to equity here is you can't just go, hey, you know what? I want to get out of arbitrage. I want to get out of hospitality. I've got $5 million of property now, and I'm just going to sit on that, right? Do you have one more plan B, right? You have one more fail safe. You have one more exit strategy when you own, right? And that is something to consider. So with that said, if you get into arbitrage as your method to get into short-term rentals and hospitality, you should have a plan. You should know why you're doing it and what you're doing it for, right? So you should be thinking, I want to get to XYZ number of properties, and I want to start selling pieces to investors, or I want to sell to a big business like a Sonder, who might buy all of your leases, or like a Blackstone or Goldman Sachs, who may want to get into the space. You should consider what your exit could be at that point. And small businesses get sold all the time, guys. So don't be afraid. This is kind of common. The company that I used to work for before I got into this industry, I worked for a company that sold newspaper subscriptions, and then I owned one that made that sold newspaper subscriptions. And the company that I worked for, the owner sold his business to the VP and some other person within the company. There's a regional director and a VP that got together and bought him out, right? So they wanted to own the business. So you can sell a small business to people within the organization or other people who want to diversify in. There are synergy plays. Like, for example, you guys might make so much cash one day in rental arbitrage that you guys decide to go buy a carpet cleaning company, or you guys decide to go buy a housekeeping company, or you decide to buy a furniture store, like a wholesaling business, or you might decide to buy a moving company. These are all businesses that at scale synergize with yours, right? If you have 500 doors in rental arbitrage and you're moving constantly, you're moving a lot of furniture, which means you're buying furniture. Furniture is degrading over time. You're moving it out and buying new furniture. And the logistics of that furniture matters. You're cleaning tons and tons of properties every single day. Carpets, they need to get cleaned, right? And so you need to have a solution for that. So at scale, though, you can go buy a small carpet cleaning company with all the inventory in the trucks. You can buy a couple U-Hauls and hire some movers by the hour, which is something that we have done. We've built our own housekeeping company. We haven't bought one, but we built one from scratch. And eventually we might get into the furniture game because we deal with furniture so much. These are synergy plays. So now just ask yourself this: if we can find companies that we want to buy as a business, doesn't it make sense that there might be businesses out there that want to buy us? Like, what would they gain by buying 500 doors that are operating in hospitality from us? Are there companies that want that? There might be. And so, just keep that in mind, that you can scale and exit in arbitrage by selling your business, and keep that in the back of your head, because anybody who ever will mentor you in business will say, well, if you don't have your exit, you shouldn't even start, right? You should always start with the exit in mind. I don't necessarily agree with that 100%, because the world changes so quickly, but it's important that you understand that you should be exit minded early on. So that way you can build it for the right reasons and build it in the right direction. Because otherwise you can take the company in a way that it's not sellable, because the way that you built it, it's really hard to do the numbers on it. It can be, pain in the butt in the back end. So advantages, disadvantages, you need plan, right? And exit is probably going to be your plan unless you want to pass it down to your family. Now, this brings me to the secret of arbitrage. And this is going to be kind of the fun leg of what I want to teach you. The secret to rental arbitrage, something that probably nobody else will tell you, is that the money is made before you even open your business. Now, this is based on risk management and net margin. And you're going to negotiate with landlords to get into property. And what I've seen in the last 4 to 6 years is that most people are so eager to get into rental arbitrage that they don't even consider that they should hang the landlord out to dry and just wring him out for every single dollar they can get out of the landlord. And I mean that in as loving of a way as possible, but sales and negotiations can be dog eat dog, and you should be prepared to take, a dog eat dog approach to your negotiations with your landlords. You can find a landlord that does not need you, right? You can find a landlord that says, I'll give you a shot. That's what the landlord will say to you. And when that happens, you're going to pay market rent. You might even pay above market rent. You might even give them a profit share. You don't get any concessions because the landlord's in the strong seat, right? But at least you got your first arbitrage, right? And that is where I think a lot of people get this wrong. So what I want to encourage you to think about is that when you negotiate with a landlord that needs you, they're going to give you things that you never thought that they'd say yes to. So for example, I have a couple recent videos on my YouTube channel. You can go and find them. One landlord gave me $500,000 and another landlord gave me $600,000 in our negotiation. The reason why is both landlords have buildings. One is a lease up and the building was brand new, finishing construction, and they wanted to get over a certain percent occupancy as soon as they possibly could. And by doing so, they can refi the building because they constructed it, filled it, cash out, refinance, make some millions and move on. So when I asked this landlord for 20% off of rent and 10 weeks of rent for free, he wasn't necessarily happy about that, but I was a very clear path to fill up a third of his building. So he came back and said, you know what? This is about $400,000 more of discounts than I was prepared to give on these doors, but I'm going to make millions on the refi. And so I'm going to do this deal with you because you're bringing me into the refi and I just want the money now, right? So he went all JG Wentworth. It's my money and I need it now. And he said yes to my deal. He gave me essentially $600,000 of discounts and free rents on the deal. Very recently, I did a deal with a landlord in Philadelphia. He's scared of the new builds. He's got a couple buildings that are older. They're slightly underperforming. They're going from A-class to B-class properties real quick. And he just wants to make sure that they're full before these other buildings start their lease ups. He wants to make sure that he's got a strong occupancy and he's got a good partner before that happens. So I approached him and I offered to take 50 doors off of his hands with 2 months of rent for free and 15% off of market rent and all the good stuff. And we negotiated a deal that's going to get me about $500,000 of discounts and free rents on the deal. And this is because the landlords have a need and I'm able to solve their problem. This is like your long-term play, guys. If you can become a business that's big enough to be able to make some promises, you're big enough to be able to get these discounts. Now, you can still get 2 months or 3 months of rent free on your first deal. Happens all the time. My students do a great job with this. I do have some scripts that I teach people that we're not going to go necessarily into my scripts in depth. I might give you a little bit just because you guys are here and you deserve something. But I have hours and hours of scripts that I teach. And at the end of those scripts, after we negotiate getting the deal and getting to yes, I teach them to negotiate with landlords to get some discounts. And there are logical ways to get a landlord to do that. Even with your very first rental arbitrage. You don't have to offer them 20 doors or 50 doors to get 2 months of rent for free. You don't. There's reasons why landlords will do it. And we'll probably speak to those here. So how to get your first arbitrage, I think is the next conversation. I recommend that you start an LLC. Oh, hey, hold on. We got some people who are unmuted. That's kind of fun. Let me mute that just in case. As we were. So I recommend you start an LLC. The reason why is because it protects you. It protects you from liability. It also allows you to start to brand. If you do this through your social security number in the United States, or however you would do the same thing in Canada, UK, where I'm a human, I'm going to do some business, that points at you a little bit too firmly. And it doesn't really allow you to do the negotiation the right way. There are a couple legal benefits immediately from being an LLC. Like you can argue around subletting law, because if you're a business and you sign a lease at a property, the business can't sleep there. The business is not a human, so the business is not the occupant. Now, if the business puts somebody in there to live for a day, for a month, for a year, they're declaring an occupant. This is common practice. So by a business declaring an occupant, it is not subletting because there is not a lease below the lease. The occupant is technically nestled into the first lease. Uh-oh, signal's breaking up. That's not good. If anybody else is experiencing a bad signal, let me know, because there's a person named Niraj who says my signal's weak. Confirm or deny. Hopefully that's not the case. But essentially, by you being an LLC and declaring your occupant, you do not have the disadvantage of having to have two leases under each other. Your occupant is actually in the original lease, which is then not a violation of subletting clauses, which is pretty awesome. Once you have your LLC set up, you're going to need to start setting up some like trade lines. Trade lines are essentially where you do business with people and you pay them, and then they say, hey, this person paid me on time. There's something called a net 30 in the United States. I'm sure internationally there's similar ways that businesses do like trade with each other. And as long as you like order from a company under what's called a net 30 term, which is a promise to pay within 30 days, and you pay in less than 30 days, then those businesses report to local credit agencies like Experian, Equifax, Dun & Bradstreet. They say that you paid your invoice. And by doing that, that's how you build credit as a business. You also need a business bank account, and you want to have some time established. So I recommend starting an LLC like yesterday. If you're gonna do this business, you want your LLC to get old as fast as possible. You can buy an aged LLC as well in the United States. I'm sure that this is also doable in Canada and other places too. They're called shelf corporations. You can buy a shelf corporation that is older. So if you are worried about not getting approved at a place that requires you to have an aged LLC of 2 years or older, you can go and buy one. Just like that. It costs you $3,000 at the most, I think, for a 2-year-old LLC. But that is a fast lane if you've got the money, but not the time. So once you've got your business, right, you can then go and you start prospect for landlords. Now, I recommend pitching single family homeowners first if this is your first rodeo. But if you're confident, if you're good at sales, you can go and talk to apartment complexes too. But you just get more practice with single family homeowners. If they say no to you, they said no to you on one house. If you go to a high rise in like downtown Miami and they tell you no, they just told you no to 300 doors, which is no fun, right? And so when the stakes are high, you want to have some practice. So I like with single family homeowners, I like going online, looking on Craigslist, on Zillow, on like all those websites, Facebook Marketplace, those are all good too, and start looking for homes and try to track how long that they've been on the rental market. If you find homes that have been on the rental market 45 days or longer, that means that landlord is going to be motivated to get somebody in there, because the truth of the matter is homeowners have mortgage payments. And if they go more than a month without a tenant, they are now starting to get worried, because that is not their plan. Their plan is not to have an empty home for multiple months, which means they're going to be more easily influenced. You can also drive neighborhoods and look for for rent signs, like in the lawn, hanging from the front of the townhomes. And then you can ask them how long the home's been on the market too. You're trying to discern homes that are on the market for longer. They will be more motivated to say yes to, an interesting offer like rental arbitrage. And then from there, you can of course find other unique spots to pick up a property. Like if you're networking in real estate investment groups, like there's the REIA groups, like in cities all over the country. You can then talk new landlords, people who are buying their first property, to make you the tenant before they even actually pick up the property. You can start making deals with people before they even buy. And that's a really cool way to pick a property too. Because now you've got a relationship where you're facilitating with the landlord, where it makes them more comfortable to buy like an investment property because they know they have a tenant already, right? You're kind of solving the tenant problem ahead of time. And this is a great trade-off to make with landlords. Some of the biggest people in the space that I've met, even before I started coaching, so we're talking 3 years ago, when I first started the YouTube channel, and hosts with 50, 100 properties started to like reach out to me, like in places like Chicago, New York, Miami. A lot of these guys, how they built was they started with a couple small landlords that had a few properties, a few small apartment complexes. They did their deal initially, and then they said, hey, if you want to continue to grow your portfolio, think of me as your master tenant. I will lease anywhere that you go by. We'll do great business together. And so these landlords would say, hey, I'm thinking about getting this property. They call up the rental arbitrage guy like me and say, hey, would you like this property? The person's like, yeah, I would love it. Let's do more business. And so now the landlord goes on a shopping spree because his biggest fear, which is tenant turnover, is gone. And that is a huge advantage for that landlord. So a lot of these biggest companies that I know have grown organically through small landlord partnerships, where those landlords got more brave as time went by, right? So that's a huge advantage there. Now your pitch, if I'm going to give you one thing that I think everybody should know, is that landlords and apartment complexes tend to know what corporate housing is. So that's a really safe place to start. There's been some stuff on YouTube. I don't know if a lot of you have watched YouTube videos on like rental arbitrage. There's some people who don't explain this well, unfortunately, and they're talking about corporate leases. So let me clear the air and help you out. The way I teach my students to pitch is we do something called sales by analogy. Sales by analogy is where we're finding something that a landlord understands and like they can visualize it. And then we start from there on a positive note and then try to keep the conversation positive as we walk over to get permission to do everything else. So when I call an apartment complex or I call a landlord, I'll call the landlord, they'll be like, this is John. I'll be like, hey, John, this is Sean. I own a corporate housing company. We're looking to pick up a few single family homes in this neighborhood here in Omaha. Now, I found your property on Facebook Marketplace. It looks great from the outside. I'd like to come by and take a look at the property though to see if it works for our business use. Like I said, we're corporate housing, and since we are a business, I'd like to, go over our business model with you and see if there's, a good partnership to be had here. Can I meet you at your property and bring you a coffee either this day or that day, right? So introduce myself as corporate housing, looking to get multiple properties. Your neighborhood looks great. I'd like to look at your property in person. Can I meet with you, bring you coffee? Goodwill. We're like, let me put in the time to meet you. That is how I start all my conversations. With apartment complexes, I actually don't go into like, can I bring you a coffee? Because they already have coffee at their buildings. I just want to check that I can lease with you before we do a walkthrough. Since I am an LLC, can you lease to LLCs? Awesome. I'll come by and see the property soon. Thanks. Bye. Right? But I'm introducing myself as corporate housing. A lot of people on YouTube have heard me say this and they try to extrapolate what I mean, but they don't have my scripts. What I mean is, yes, we're getting corporate leases, but we're going to still pitch the business. We don't just show up as corporate housing, sign a corporate lease, and expect to have permission to Airbnb. I've been seeing a lot of people in the rental arbitrage space who have paid other coaches and they're getting evicted. And they're contacting me on Facebook going, I'm getting evicted. I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, how long have you had the lease? Well, how did you get your permission? Did you get it by email? Like, what is up? What did you tell them? And they're like, I don't know. I did whatever this one lady said on YouTube and got like my first arbitrage as a corporate lease. And it's been a disaster for some people, right? So the beginning is the corporate lease. That is the beginning of the conversation because that's where they're comfortable. You will show up in person and talk to a landlord or talk to an apartment complex, and you're going to tell them all about your business model, but you're going to talk in the format of this is how similar it is to corporate housing. So the beginning of my script, I'm not going to give you the whole thing because it can get long, but the beginning of my script, when I'm doing a walkthrough with an apartment complex and they start to ask about my business or the landlord at the home and they start to ask about me or my business, I'll say, yes, so we're a corporate housing company, but we do things slightly differently. And then I'll say most corporate housing companies, they'll have their customers first, and then they'll come to a building to try to fill the space. And with our business model, we're actually looking for leases that we can take long-term and then like furnish the space first, make the space beautiful, and then find a tenant to live there. That is the first 20 seconds of what is my whole long script. But the tip of the iceberg here, what you need to understand is I just said we're corporate housing, but we're slightly different. We're 90+% similar. We're less than 10% different. When you pitch your business this way to a landlord, to an apartment complex, you will have the highest likelihood of getting a yes because they're looking at you where they're like, I understand corporate housing. I feel comfortable. And they're like, oh, this is interesting. So you do something a little unique. Let me hear all about it. Tell me about what's unique about your corporate housing company. And they're still looking for similarities because you have them in the analogy mindset, right? And this is a key for our sale. So when you pitch businesses, pitch sales by analogy, you're starting with corporate housing, corporate leases, but if you stop there, you will get evicted as soon as you start operating because you did not get permission to short-term rent. You did not get permission to list on Airbnb or VRBO. And then you will call me crying or you'll Instagram me crying that they're evicting you 3 weeks or 4 weeks into your lease and you don't know what to do, right? So that is what you're not going to do, guys, okay? So understand this is a pitch. You're getting full permission. You're not like trying to sneak into buildings. You're doing the whole thing, right? And if you do this right, you get your first 5, your first 10, you grow with those landlords. You don't need to get a lot of yeses because landlords have more properties. Apartment complexes have more properties. You get a couple yeses after trying so hard to do it the right way, to pitch it the right way. You try your tail off to do it the right way and you finally get a couple deals. You're building on solid foundation. Now you'll go from 5 to 10 to 25. You call that apartment complex and say, hey, are there any other apartment complexes in your portfolio that could benefit from our offer? And you grow. Next thing you know, you have 50, 75 doors. And then you go to new buildings and say, hey, I'd like to take 3 floors of your building. And we have the financials that prove we can do it. Now you're breaking into new buildings that would tell everybody else no. They'll tell everybody else no, but you're a completely different type of operator because you've got the cash. right? You've got the wherewithal. And that is really that long arching, like we talked about. Now that you're talking to these buildings that are in lease up, you're doing what I'm doing, right? You're doing, give me 2 months free, give me 10 weeks free, give me 15% off of rent. And that is where the big money starts rolling in, where you're knocking down $500,000 in profit before you even furnish the place. Over the life of your lease, you've got an extra $500,000 of efficiency that your competition, they would have taken the leases outright. They'd have been like so happy to get this building that they'll pay full rent, no weeks free, nothing. They'll just take the leases. But because you negotiated it well, you've got an extra $500,000 of efficiency profit over the course of the lease because you knew how to play the game. And so how to scale is the next conversation. And let me just tell you guys, if you have any questions about anything that I just talked about with a pitch or with the psychology of why a landlord will tell you yes, stuff like that, you can go to my YouTube channel. I'd go through my free course, like I said, and you can hit me up on Instagram and ask me some questions. Brian asks, how do you deal with licenses for the units if the units are only allowed to be done by the owner? We roll into our leases anywhere that you need permitting or licensing. We have something called a lease addendum, and we didn't get into that. When you get permission from a landlord, you need that in writing. And so that's called a lease addendum. And I do have a video on YouTube about how to write out a lease addendum, like how to make your own lease addendum. So you don't have to go to Rocket Lawyer or something. Now in those lease addendums, when I get a landlord to sign one of those, in that lease addendum, I put in the language that landlord has given me permission to run this very specific business model. And if the city, state, county requires the owner to obtain licenses or permits, that this paper shall serve as legal permission for me to go and fetch those permits on behalf of the owner, right? So I'm asking for permission to go pull those permits down. Otherwise, if you need to get a permit for yourself and you need to prove landlord's approval, then you write into that lease addendum that this addendum shall serve as written approval from the landlord that shall be sufficient enough to obtain permits from the city, something like that. You just write it into the addendum. And so you want to do all the work for the landlord if you can, because of course we're selling the landlord. You want to get the deal done. You want to knock down the hurdles for them. So in that lease addendum, that one little extra sheet of paper that has all of your permissions and stuff, just include anything else that you need, anything supplemental like licensing. If you're talking about a country where only the owner can rent on Airbnb, then you actually just make the agreement not formally a lease. You make it a marketing agreement instead of a lease agreement, right? So you go to the landlord and you pitch the idea. Now, what we're now talking about is a slight difference between rental arbitrage and co-hosting, which Ellie probably talked to you about co-hosting yesterday, right? And so the difference is how the money is split up. But you could go to a landlord who wants his rent paid and you say, tell you what I'll do. I know that like you have to be the one technically to Airbnb this property. So what I can do for you is I can Airbnb for you, but I can guarantee you rent. I can guarantee you rent minimum. Take that risk. I would do it, but I love risk, right? So what you're doing is you're coming at them with what is looking like a co-host agreement and a rental agreement at the same time. Because a normal co-host agreement, the person's like, hey, I'm going to put your property on Airbnb, but you have to buy the furniture and I get 25%. That's a co-host agreement. Here in this new market that we just made up out of nowhere, hi, Mr. Landlord, I'm going to co-host your property, but I'm going to buy the furniture and I'm going to give you your rent. And then if we break this number, I'll give you a profit share over the number that we break, right? So if the rent is $2,000, I get 100% up to $4,000, and then we 50-50 split everything above $4,000 or something like that, or 30-70 split where I get 70%, he gets 30 above $4,000. That's probably what I would do. And so that way you're solving the landlord's worry, which is base rent, where they're skeptical of co-hosting because they're like, if you don't get any customers, I get $0. Like, well, I'm going to guarantee you rent minimum. And then we'll talk about profits when we're outperforming. And like I said, at the very early part of this 1 hour, guys, is what looks like a risk from the outside no longer looks like a risk once you're in the inside. So because you just know the dynamics, you're in the space. So how to scale? My final tips for the last 10 minutes for you guys, scaling this business. First off, you need to understand that it's about people. You are going to be hiring people to scale. It's not about technology. Technology does help. And technology helps make people do better. They can do more work and make less mistakes, but it's really about people. If If you think about it, you have one apartment, there's a housekeeper in the apartment, right? Learning to use that housekeeper to do everything from inventory checking to making sure the TV still works, the internet's still connected, all that stuff, to make sure the guest has left, they didn't leave a gun behind or something, whatever the crazy stuff that you imagine could happen. The housekeeper is going to be empowered to do so much. Your housekeeper is more than a housekeeper, really is really the key to this, guys. So then, after you've really understood that it's about people, you're hiring housekeepers, you're gonna hire customer service staff, you get 30, 40 properties, you're gonna have a property manager, like a territory person. You're probably gonna have a guest experience person. You're gonna have maintenance people, right? And fast numbers, just so you guys can have a general outline. Every 5 properties that I have, I hire 1 housekeeper, right? Every 15 properties that I have 1 extra management or admin role. So I hired my first property manager at 15, hired her an assistant at 30, hired a customer service rep at about 45, right? So every 15 doors, I'm trying to add another admin or management position into the property, like into the business. And we're talking full-time equivalents. And if you don't know what a full-time equivalent is, a full-time equivalent is 40 hours of work is a full-time equivalent. You can hire 4 people that do 10 hours of work each. 4 by 10 is 40, full-time equivalent. So when I hire customer service agents, right? So at 100 properties right now, we've got 3 territory managers, we've got an assistant manager, we've got a full-time stager, and we've got a team of like customer service reps. We only have about 55 to 60 hours a week of customer service reps working, right? So we got 1.5 full-time equivalents of customer service reps, but we have multiple of them because we never want to go without one, right? And so that's kind of in our management structure. So understand what a full-time equivalent is as you hire. And then that leads actually to my second bullet point for this, that it's all about people, and then everything can be measured in units. Everything is measured in units. How long a housekeeper takes is measured in hourly units. If you have 3 housekeepers at a home, you can still measure in hourly units. You just multiply the time it takes by 3, because it's hours of housekeepers times 3. If it takes 3 hours to clean a home with 3 housekeepers, that's 9 units, right? Everything can be turned into a unit. If you turn something into a unit, you can measure it, right? So if you're looking at occupancy, like basically 1 day on your calendar is 3% occupancy, generally on a 30-day calendar, 31-day calendar, right? So now if you have 2 days unoccupied every month, you're at 94% occupancy, but basically a day is a 3% unit of your occupancy, right? So you start to look at everything like in like little black and white dots. How many dots does it take to get something done? Like doing your laundry, right? How many washers and dryers do I have? How long does it take for a washer and dryer to complete a cycle? And how much laundry can I get through that washer dryer cycle? If I have 100 properties in a high rise and I've got a room in that building where I've got 100 doors and I've got a room with washers and dryers, I'm trying to measure in units so I know exactly how many washers and dryers do I need to have in that room, right? If I'm going to clean 40 apartments a day and I've got 6 hours to clean the linens, right? Or something like that, how many doors per hour can I clean worth of linens, right? And so if I don't have enough cleaning power, I'm going to buy an extra washer and dryer in this case, right? So that's why units matter at scale. Turn everything into units so that way somebody can just do the math. A lot of times when we're looking at specifics, whether it's like housekeeping, like doing laundry, inventory and supplies and stuff, it's like, it doesn't matter if we're counting apples or if we're counting oranges, if we're counting bananas, right? So turn apples, oranges, and bananas all into just ones and zeros. You're going to kind of be indiscriminate about what those units are. I know that's kind of an abstract tip, but we're talking at scale. When you look back down at your organization, you don't want to see a bunch of stuff that has context. You're like, oh, this is one thing, but that's slightly different. You don't want all that context because it increases the amount of decision-making that you have to make. And then also be greedy with people's time, but generous with how you treat them. So what I essentially meaning with this tip is you are going to try to take full control of people's work lives. You don't want them working for someone else. You don't want them part-timing. You don't want them a freelancer. If you're paying housekeepers by the door, and then they go out and get housekeepings at other properties where they get paid by the door, they're always going to be loyal to whoever pays the most per door for the housekeeping, right? But if you give somebody 30 plus hours a week to clean for you, they don't have time to go prospect for another job. They're so afraid that if they go and try to find other work, that they might accidentally not do their work here and they're going to lose the lion's share of their income, right? You need to give them an opportunity worth losing. So you want to be greedy with their time, build an organization that can utilize all of their work time. So they give all of their work time to you. People choose how much they want to work. We're not talking about enslaving people or overworking them, but people want to work. These people want to work to make money. Give them all the work that they can get, but then be generous with how you treat them, because people leave for more than just the money. They don't just leave over whether or not their pay was good enough. They leave if their boss is a jerk. They leave if the boss says no to taking time off, or doesn't understand, or doesn't practice empathy when they're having a bad day. So be generous with how you treat people, but be greedy with their time, right? That's going to be the way that you build a sticky organization. Somebody tried to headhunt Haley from me. Somebody tried to hire Haley to leave my company. And they're basically, whatever we want, we will hire you at whatever your price is. And Haley's like, no, thanks. I'm very happy here. And because we built her own custom position where she just loves what she does. She has full control over the company. She has my trust and she has my support, and she knows that. She can make decisions. She can tell me that I'm wrong, and I will not like fight her on things. She can make the final decision in a lot of ways. And that has created such a sticky position that even the most attractive financial offer will not get her to leave my organization. And at scale, that is super important. There's an older gentleman that I met in Houston back when I was in my very early 20s. And he said, Sean, if you think that building something's hard, try keeping it. Because the moment that you have something that generates $5 million a year, somebody knows that it's there and they're going to come after it, and they're going to try to take it from you. There's going to be people losing sleep at night trying to take from you what you have built. People aren't going to try to do it if they until you run the 4-minute mile, no one else is going to try. Right? So people in your competitive space, once they see you making good money, they're going to come after your money. That's just how that works. So you need to build it to keep it. Don't just build it to work, but build it where people will not leave you. And that's how you keep your scale. You're going to create systems. That's going to be my fourth tip for you guys. Everything's a system. I kind of alluded to that. Like your laundry is a system. Sometimes you're going to do laundry off-site, which means you're going to take it out of the home. Sometimes you're going to do laundry in the home. Those are two different workflows. Right? So housekeepers, we have a 5-step cleaning system for our housekeepers. The first 2 steps of our 5-step system have nothing to do with cleaning. They have nothing to do with cleaning at all. But they are doing so much more than housekeeping in our 5-step cleaning system because they're running the business. They are the glue of the organization. Logistics, restocking supplies, that is a whole system. That's a workflow. Dealing with resolutions where we need to ask guests for extra money, because we actually upsell guests. Like, you want to check out late, you want to check in early, you want to buy a little something that we have inside the house. These are all upsells that we do, and we have to open resolutions for those. Or if a guest damages something or steals something, we have to open resolutions for those. We have to have systems that we can slow the company down to get those resolutions done, but not steal resources from operations, right? Housekeeping team, management, they need to be able to do all their jobs 100%. They can't be the ones that are going in to do resolutions. So we have to create a separate system for that. So these are systems. Then your whole goal, guys, with arbitrage to do this well is to hire yourself out of a job. You want to be doing nothing within the organization unless you just decide you want to be doing something in the organization. There's a book, E-Myth, the E-Myth series, like E-Myth Mastery, E-Myth Revisited. And his one most famous phrase from the book is work on your business, not in your business. If you're working in the business, if you're the housekeeping manager, or you're the revenue manager, or you're the customer service manager, because that's just your favorite work in the company, you're always going to be stuck in the business. You're going to have inherent biases. You're going to have loyalty to certain parts of the business that just aren't going to be good for you long term. You need to get out of the business so you can be objective. You can take advantage of opportunities that you don't see because you're inside the company. You can make hard decisions that you would normally be too emotionally attached to make if you're still in the business. You need to get out of the business to work on it. It becomes clinical. It's like working on a patient doing surgery. You can't have any emotional attachment to that patient, right? Live or die, you are the doctor. So you want to get on that business. There's another book I recommend called The Leadership Pipeline, and it talks about all those layers of going from just being like a housekeeper to being a housekeeping manager per se, all the way up to being the CEO of a company. They don't talk about housekeeping in that book. That's just an example, but they talk about the individual contributor role and the rise all the way up. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was 1 hour, and that's all I think I'm allowed to give you. So I hope that Ryan Luke is back in here. We're going to be bringing on somebody else here too. Let me pull this open and make sure. I'm going to check our mini summit to see who is talking after me. because I want to make sure I do this right. If you guys have any questions, by the way, until we do, I think I have to hand the baton off. If you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat box right now. And cool. Right now is what we're going to do the wrap up, I guess. So there's going to be people coming on board to do a wrap up. So those of you who are here and available to do the wrap up, who are speakers, raise your hand. I'm going to invite Ryan to unmute. I think I did this. Am I an hour early, guys? Did I do this an hour early? Hopefully I did, because it'd be super wild. I'd be talking to you guys for 2 hours. So thank you guys, and please hold. What time is it in Britain right now? Who has that for me? Is it 8 o'clock in Britain, or is it 7 o'clock in Britain? Or is it 6? It'll be 7? Okay, cool. I think I did do it. Okay. I am on time. I'm not early. All right. I'm in Central Time Zone, Texas. So that can happen sometimes, where we just don't obviously know what we're, we don't do math over the pond very well. So as we get opportunity for any of the other speakers to come in and kind of do like a group send off, then we can do a round of questions. I'm sure you guys probably have plenty of questions about short-term rentals in general as well. I don't just teach rental arbitrage. I teach all of the business. So feel free to ask any questions that you have, whether it has to do with rental arbitrage or not. I know that my slot was arbitrage and speaking at scale, but of course I'm here for you guys. I can almost hear the clacking of keys. So I do not know why we don't have any other speakers scheduled to come up. Let me see if anybody else is paying attention. And Chris is here. I wonder, maybe it's because I became the host. Let me see if I can make Ryan the host here. Okay. Now, you all can still hear me, correct? Yep, okay, cool. All right, just want to make sure. So I just made Ryan the host just in case. Maybe that's the reason why we can't have other people added up. I don't know. But Ali asked, how's the New York market for Airbnb and rental arbitrage? And then do I have any advice for doing research on potential areas in the UK? Yeah, so for rental arbitrage and Airbnb in New York, there's gonna be different neighborhoods that have different restrictions and rules on how you can Airbnb. Word on the street is that New York is actually gonna start lightening up on their short-term rental policies because the hotel industry took such a big hit that they're not generating the tax money that New York City would like, right? So Manhattan may get easier, like legally to Airbnb in soon because the hotel industry is not making enough money. Places like Queens, Brooklyn. Oh, is Brooklyn where Dumbo is? Yeah, Brooklyn's where the Brooklyn Bridge. That's Dumbo, right? That's absolutely where you want to be. I don't know if any of you, if you guys just want to look up Dumbo, New York, it's right on the water. It's right where the bridge is. It's like the Instagram spot right now. So popping up in Brooklyn would be a super move because of just that photo of Dumbo that everybody wants to take. So New York, the rental market crashed down 30% roughly. And the rental market is actually at like 10-year lows right now, but travel is rebounding. So there's a lot of money in tourism in New York, but the rental market is at like a 10-year low. Now is a perfect time to pick up rental properties for arbitrage. That's a wonderful time. As long as you can get in with the regulations, get the right permitting. You can also do monthly stays and use something like PeerSpace. PeerSpace is a by the hour where people can come in for photo shoots and stuff. So you can make your place PeerSpace friendly and do monthly stays or PeerSpace and do kind of like a split thing. That's a kind of a way to go in New York if you can't get the proper permitting. When you guys do research on it, like anywhere, UK included, use Airbnb Map View. So go on to airbnb.com, type in the place that you want to look at, go into Map View and zoom in, right? Zoom into a neighborhood until the left banner shows you less than 300 doors. And maybe even I can actually go in and show you guys. I haven't done a screen share yet, so this would be my first. So let me type in Airbnb.com since we're going a little over. Yeah, so let me do this. Just search any days. And let me try to share screen. Actually, I made myself not a, wait, I think I can. Nope. I can't share screen because I made Ryan Luke the host again this whole time. Okay, so anyway, I'll try to explain it this way. When you guys are in map view searches only the area that is visible, right? And if you zoom in enough to like let's say you're on the London Eye, right? You're just looking for all the properties there and you're trying to vet that area. You want to go till you zoom in enough that there's less than 300 Airbnb properties showing in the list. The Airbnb maxes out at a search of 300 properties. So in order to do relative supply search, you need to get under 300. So what you can do then is once you're at under 300, you search for 2 guests, then search for 3 guests, then search for 4, search for 5. You keep refreshing your search, but you're going to notate how many listings are available at each size, right? And if you want to just make sure that you're not like finding units that actually are off the market, but like where their calendars are blocked, go and search in the future, like a month, maybe 5 weeks, and go search like Wednesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like a 2-night stay in the middle of the week, like a month from now. And then do that search and then do the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guests and refresh all the way up to 16 and document each number. You can do like 3 of these polls and pull an average, right? Where you do like a Wednesday, Thursday, and then you go 2 months into the future and do a Monday, Tuesday. You know what I mean? You can pull an average just to make sure you've got a good base of data. But what you're looking for is you're looking for a point where like the number just drops a lot. So for example, when 3 guests are traveling, there's 250 properties. When 4 guests are traveling, there's 240. That's only a 10 property drop. At 5, it's like 220. At 6, it's like 208. But then from 6 to 7, it goes from 208 to 115 or something like that. It just drops, right? What you've just noticed is there's a bottleneck in supply. Properties that can house 7 people or more, they just cut in half, right? And demand does not drop like that, guys. Demand is a steady curve too. So there are way more groups of 2 and 3 looking than groups of 16, but the demand from 6 people to 7 people is more gradual. So if you find that there's a cliff in the supply side, then you can take advantage of a gap in the supply. That's like one example. I do have a video on 5 things to look for on like where, let's just like type in where to Airbnb. It's a video I did like a month ago or less. Just YouTube search where to Airbnb. I talk about 5 metrics that you want to search for. And Airbnb, that map view is a great place to start because you can do this supply and demand stuff. Then you just do your regular Google search. You're going to Google search for apartments and stuff like that. And you're going to look for points of interest. And when you guys are doing your research, you're looking for points of interest, places where people will travel to for what XYZ reasons. And then also you're looking for supply to know where all the other hosts are. You're trying to find out how much money that they're making. You also want to look at their rules. Like, do they have a 2-day minimum, 3-day minimum? Do they give monthly discounts or not? This is all stuff that can be done on Airbnb Map View. Is all the competitor research is Airbnb Map View. You don't have to pay for AirDNA or Mashvisor. You can, and you can get more robust data that way and look at some other bigger metrics and some other charting. Like AirDNA, for example, if you use the free version of AirDNA and just type in London, for example, it'll show you the best months and the worst months. And it'll create a line chart and show you like, how's April compared to May, compared to June, compared to August. And it'll show you relative incomes. It won't give you all the very basic data. Like, it won't give you all the nuts and bolts, but you can, without spending money, see what the seasonality of a market is on AirDNA. They give you that for free. So there are some ways to do stuff like that. OTAs versus billing. Okay. Niraj asked about OTAs like Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com. You will always use them. You will almost always use them because they're easy just to switch into and get bookings. And scaling on them is, you have to scale on them. Like I went up to 100 units on Airbnb alone. If I was starting from scratch with 2 doors and was trying to do it without an OTA, I couldn't tell you how I would do that. I'd basically be calling businesses. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Business. Would you like to put your employees in some apartments that I can pick up, right? The sale would be really clunky, right? But now that I have 100 doors, hi, Mr. or Mrs. Business, we have inventory available for your employees. They can move in today, right? It's a different type of sale. So you're going to scale with OTAs, and then you're going to turn your loyalty to direct because you're not going to pay those commissions. You can really name your price. You're no longer in the market. And that is really going to be your long term, is to go more business to business and direct bookings. But OTAs are going to be a key to scale, and they're always going to be your friend because they're always going to have new customers. But you want to have a plan to recapture those customers. Let's see, finding out who to get in touch with new buildings. Who is the right person to look for? Companies that have ability to sign. So different businesses or different buildings have different organizational structures, Brian. So some buildings are owned and managed by the same company. Like CoStar owns and manages a lot of their own properties. Richdale owns and manages. Greystar, they own and manage some of their own, but they also manage for a ton of other people, right? Lincoln manages for a ton of other people. Amley manages for a ton of other people, but they also own some of their own as well. So if you're dealing with a smaller company that owns and manages their own, you're going to just try to get up to the regional level. And this is a pro tip for you. If you want to get up past the leasing agent, just swing a bigger bat. So even if you don't know if you can pick up 20 doors, like if you don't know if you can get your hands on that much cash, when you walk through the leasing office, go, we have a budget for about 20 apartments that we're going to be looking to pick up in the near future timeline. You're going to give yourself time to get them. If you get the deal, if you catch the car, then worry about filling it up, right? But swing a bigger bat, because when you say we're looking to pick up 20 doors, then what happens is that leasing agent's like, oh, I don't want to lose this deal. If I screw this up, I'm going to get in trouble. So they push you up. If you say we're looking to pick up, we have a budget of $1 million a year that we'd like to spend on rents in this neighborhood. If you have multiple properties in this neighborhood, we'd be interested in multiple properties, multiple buildings. Well, now you just went from the building level to the regional level or the district level, because now you're talking about spending $1 million a year at multiple properties. And that's how you bubble up layers. If you need to get higher up on the ladder, that's an easy way. Just talk a big game and they'll hand you up, because this is sale for them too. They are trying to sell you, right? So as long as you don't come off as salesy and they think that they're selling you, you can get to that decision maker, wheeler, dealer person just by saying bigger things. Let me check to see if anybody we've got a private chat for the summit. Virtual summits are super fun, by the way. This is kind of fun. I see we've got I'm drinking coffee, but we got some people out there with some lagers and stuff. Okay, we got some chat. Ryan is stuck on a call with a client. It's kind of fun, but sorry to hear, Ryan, you're going to watch this later. Sorry to hear that you can't make it. My coffee to you. I don't see anybody coming on. So I think what we'll do is I'll take a couple more questions, and then we'll just wrap it up. So it's 15 after the hour. So I've got some stuff that I have to do, unfortunately. Brian, we can have a private chat. Just DM me on Instagram. I think Instagram is probably the best place to go. And the Philippines, Trisha, that's a good question. I have not done any research on the Philippines, but if I can give you some universal rules. Right now, I am looking internationally for markets that had their tails kicked the worst by COVID, that are reliant heavily on tourism, and that they have a reopening plan that allows me to get rents for super cheap somewhere where landlords are motivated because COVID crushed their local market. And then I can get in late enough in the pandemic that I'm not holding on to inventory for too long before travel starts to come back up, right? So I'm trying to thread that needle of time where I'm looking for places internationally where the rents are low, they're depressed. Landlords have a bunch of inventory because people had a hard time with COVID and tourism. And I'm waiting for that moment where they start to crest back into being popular again. And I'm trying to pick up rents right before that hits, right? That's the timing game that I'm trying to play. That could happen in Philippines. That could happen in Thailand, could happen in Mexico. Colombia, Medellin, Colombia is one of the ones that I'm trying to pull off. There's places all over Europe that are going to start reopening and popping off. So that's my advice for you. I haven't done specific research on the Philippines, but I think that's probably the best advice I can give you. And Andy's like, yeah, you just answered. We're scouting. India, Dubai's in India, right? Actually, I know a host who's got a bunch of villas in Dubai, and she crushes it. She's got the fancy stuff, and they're great. So I think Dubai's good. Of course, that's just the surface level. I'm sure that there's other stuff that you can pick up. Like Dubai's got 3+ million people in the city, so you could go pick up your typical studio apartment inside the city next to these high rises where people are trying to get in there and be in the city, but they don't have $2,000 a night to blow. You know what I mean? You can get more streamlined stuff there. Oh, Dubai's UAE. Sorry. Dang it. My bad. I don't know enough about like the major cities in India, but as you can tell, like this is where my head goes. Can I pick up 20 apartments somewhere where people are going to travel for business and tourism? Like there's a robust reason why people are going. I think from what I've heard about India right now, like India's got a really hard time with COVID, which is super sad that they're having such a hard spike. So I put put it on my watch list and see how they recover, but I don't imagine it to be anytime necessarily soon. You know, it might be 4 to 6 months before I would probably consider picking a property in India, with just the pandemic stuff on the news. That's probably it. But I'm not an expert on India, like by any means. So I'm just going to give you like my intuition on that. But I guess I'm saying the UAE is a great place. You know, Arab Emirates. I'd look at Istanbul, Turkey too. Anything I'm actually looking at Belgrade, Serbia as well. That's another city that I think that I can get properties for a good price. That has a good tourism pull throughout Europe. Croatia is really close to Serbia. A Split is always fun, and everybody wants to go to Zagreb. You know what? If Game of Thrones season 8 was better, I'd pick up stuff in Croatia. But Game of Thrones ruined it for me. Now I probably will cry every time that I'm in Zagreb. So just because I know that they ruined that. I was thinking Milan before. I've a couple friends I visited in Milan. It's a really cool city, and I think it is diverse enough that you could pull it off. I don't know about the regulations or anything like that, so I can't speak to that. But what I've noticed, here's another thing for you guys to think about. Let me just give you the broad answer. If you were wondering, is this city going to be good to Airbnb? I want you first to look, are there hotels? Do you see hotels in your city? Because, I mean, we're talking, some of these towns are really small, people ask me about. First, check for hotels. Do the hotels look like they're in business? Do they look like they're doing okay? Are they closing? Like, are they closing at some crazy rate? If you're not seeing that in the news, then hotels are fine. Check that green box. Then 2, open up Airbnb map view and search for Airbnb listings in the area that you think you want to Airbnb. Do you see Airbnb properties? Then go look at their calendar. Do you see that they have some dates blocked off? Do they have like weekends blocked off here and there, a couple weekdays here and there? If you see Airbnbs in business in whatever city you want to go in, there's no reason why you can't be in business there either. You just got to find out how and why they're doing it. So, because of course, that's the caveat with some regulations in some cities. So, but if you see Airbnbs in a city, that means somebody's making money in the industry, right? So that would be the beginning of my yes answer, is the way I would put it. So Ryan's saving the day for a client. That's why he isn't in here right now. He's doing something really big for somebody who needs him very, very badly. So with that said, guys, I believe this was recorded. So if you missed any days from the summit, I have a feeling you're going to be able to go back and watch them. You're going to want to keep in touch with Ryan Luke and Mark from Boostly and all the guys, because they're probably going to give you like more details. I would love a copy of this. I'd like to see the first couple of days because I missed them. Let me remind you of some resources. There's my Facebook group, the hosts of Airbnb Automated. Like I said, I've got a free course on YouTube. If you reach out to me on Instagram, I can talk to some of you guys one-on-one. My Instagram is Airbnb Automated. Also, just nice and easy, Airbnb Automated. I do have teams that watch my Instagram, so you might end up talking to somebody who represents me initially, but they pass things to me that are relevant. I do have a course. Some of you might be wondering, I do teach people, I do mentor one-on-one and stuff like that. If you're a member of my course, it's kind of like this format right here, like we're Zooming. I do a 2-hour Zoom every Saturday where I unmute everybody who's in my course and they just ask me questions. We just talk. So it's like a group call. So it's 2 hours every Saturday where I coach people on their unique situations. We've handled like really crazy things like California legislation, like California regulations. I've helped my students get through that, like the 30-day minimums there. We of course go through the pitch and practice pitching each other, so that way they can close different deals. I've got guys that are knocking down 10 or 15 doors at a time using my scripts. I do have some stuff that we even pitch via email, and a girl just actually, I'll see if I can pull it on my phone. She was super happy this morning. She was negotiating a deal like the way that we teach. And then I don't know if you can see that. Probably not. Let me do this. That might be more visible. So this is on my Instagram right now. I actually posted this, so you can look for this if you want to read it. But basically this girl, she used her scripts, talked to a building, did the walkthrough like I told you, and then we buttoned that up in the email. And then after the walkthrough, she got the lease agreement from them. She did the email script that we teach to button it up, and they gave her permission, just like that. So, and that's the one final leg. Like I told you, people are getting evicted. People are not buttoning up their sale to get everything on paper. I think it's one of the biggest things in rental arbitrage. If you're looking to get into it, if a lot of you are newbies and you don't do contracts much, you may not I want this deal so bad that I'm willing to cut a corner. I promise you, in this industry, you don't want to cut any corners, right? You want your deal between you and your landlord to be agreed, and you want to know it's tight, because you don't want the landlord to change their mind on you one day and like try to evict you. So an email button up is how I teach my students, and you can see more about that later. So if you have questions about coaching, or about maybe even just you want to know more about the city that you're in, you want me to take a look at your Airbnb listing or anything nice and easy, just send me a message on Instagram. I'm happy to help you guys. And with that said, I think we're going to wrap this up. You guys are all champs. I appreciate you hanging with me for more than an hour, for an hour and 20 minutes. It's really cool. If you guys need me for anything else, I know that like I wish I could like stay forever and just answer questions for an hour or something like that. If you need me, just find me on Instagram, Airbnb Automated. I'll see you guys there. And I'll see you on the next one. This was super fun, guys. With that said,